On today's Locked On Giants podcast, there's been a bunch of rumors about the New York Giants draft direction. Which one am I buying? Which ones am I not buying? I'll tell you next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast and for making us your first listen of the day. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. All right, everybody. Happy draft weekend. We have made it. It is the start of the 2025 NFL draft. It is today, actually tonight, depending on when you are watching this video. And we are finally going to get answers. What are the Giants going to do? What were they thinking all along? How close did they come to fulfilling some of these rumors that we have been hearing about all for like the last, 4 or 5 months? I mean, it's been a long period. Mock drafts galore, rumors, reports, speculation. Nobody knows what's really going to happen until it actually happens or doesn't happen. But that being said, since this is our final pre-draft show, we're going to go through some of the most common rumors that have been floated out there. And I'm going to tell you if I'm buying them or if I'm not buying them. Now, before I get into them, just a disclaimer. I am recording this show on Tuesday evening. So by the time this show airs, and it's going to drop on Wednesday night, actually, I'll probably drop it a little bit earlier. There is a possibility that, any one of these scenarios might have happened. So I just want to put that timestamp out there so that, when you watch this video, if something I say I'm buying or not buying happens or doesn't happen, when I recorded this. Okay, so I have a handful of scenarios I'm going to run through. Let's get into it. All right, the first scenario, the Giants are going to trade out of number 3 and down to pick up more draft assets. I am selling on that one. Okay, the reason why I am not buying that particular rumor is there's actually several reasons. Number one, the Giants typically in the first round, if they're going to trade under this regime, they've always traded up. You look at when they traded up to get Deonte Banks, they tried to trade up with Tennessee to get the number 1 overall pick. That's not happening. That was never going to happen, by the way. So the Giants, best available. Okay, they are going to go best available. Now, it just so happens that in this draft class, you've got 2 players that are considered generational talents, and Travis Hunter of Colorado and Abdul Carter of Penn State. The Giants would be foolish to trade down and lose out on one of those guys. Now, look, you might say, well, what if they stay put and they take a quarterback? We're going to actually talk about that. I don't think it's going to be a quarterback. I think the Giants are going to stay put at number 3, take the best available, which again is whoever Cleveland doesn't take. If they don't take Carter, it's going to be Carter. If they don't take Hunter, it's going to be Hunter. If Cleveland doesn't take either of those guys, and it comes down to a choice of Hunter or Carter, I think the Giants will take Travis Hunter, right? Because he just fits his versatility and his fit for where the Giants maybe need a little bit more reinforcement at cornerback and receiver. It's a no-brainer to take Travis Hunter if he is on the board. If he is not, you go with Abdul Carter. You beef up that pass rush because you can never have too many pass rushers available. All right, so I'm not buying that one. What about this next one? Will the Giants trade up into the bottom of round 1 to get a quarterback? I go back and forth on this one. Part of me says they're not going to do it. Part of me says they are. And the more I think about it, the more I think it is possible. So I'm going to say I'm going to buy this one. All right. So I have outlined scenarios before where if the Giants want to trade back into the bottom of the first round, they've got to get ahead of Pittsburgh, who drafts 21st. So the target would be Denver. But see, here's the thing. Is the quarterback the Giants like most in this class outside of Cam Ward, who's just not going to be an option? Will he make it down to number 20? All right. Will that guy be Jackson Dart? Is that the guy that they like? Do the Giants like Tyler Shuck, where maybe they think he's the guy who's going to go off the board? Do they like Kyle McCord? What are they going to do? And do they need to necessarily trade up to get a quarterback on the fifth year option? Let me answer that question first. While it would be ideal to do that because, whoever they do draft at quarterback, that kid's going to sit this year behind the veterans. The more I think about it, the less necessary it is. Because look, Russell Wilson's only here on a 1-year deal. Jameis Winston is here on a 2-year deal. So even if you let the kid sit for this year, and you draft him, let's say in the second round or some point on day 2, that means you only get him for 4 years. So 1 year is automatically be spent as a redshirt year. All right. That's not the end of the world, because if the kid shows progress, you extend him before you get the opportunity to lose him. Now, that's one way of looking at it, but you always have to look ahead when it comes to the draft. All right. Now, by that, I mean, you've got to look at your roster and say, okay, how many contracts are coming up for renewal if I put a quarterback on the 4-year plan as opposed to the 5-year plan? You potentially run into a situation where you're going to have several guys you're going to need to renew if you don't move up for your quarterback, which is why I think if there is a quarterback this team likes, and, I have heard they like several of them, any given day, it's this guy better than that guy. We'll find out exactly who it is they like, but it makes sense in this case to move up. All right. Now, people will say, well, you're going to give up draft picks and this team isn't just a quarterback away. And why would you do that? Folks, the way Joe Schoen set up this draft is through free agency. All right. So he went through free agency. Basically, he filled all the glaring holes on this roster. Now, I get it. Quarterback, long-term quarterback is still a glaring hole. You can make a case that defensive line depth is still a glaring hole. You can make a case that offensive line depth is still a glaring hole. But the point being is, for the short term, there are no glaring holes on this roster to where, if you're Joe Schoen, you might say, okay, you know what? I can afford to give up a couple of picks to move up into the bottom of the first round. So that's why I think it is very much a strong possibility that the Giants do that if there is a quarterback that they like. Now, some of you will also say, well, if there's a quarterback they like, why don't they just take him at 3? Because, folks, you don't want to pass on a generational talent like a Hunter or a Carter. It's that simple. None of these quarterbacks, I don't think, outside of Cam Ward, are ranked in the first 5 or 6 picks on any boards that I know of. All right. Not NFL boards, but, draft boards. Even our own analysis over on New York Giants on SI, we don't have quarterbacks ranked that high. But if you can get one lower in the first round, it might just be worth it because you filled up some of the depth spots that you were lacking at the start of free agency. So again, you can afford to, if you're Joe Shane, to give up a couple of draft picks to move up. Maybe you send your second round pick, you send maybe one of your thirds, maybe not pick number 99. And if you want to, throw in a seventh round pick for good measure, you throw that in as well. If it means moving up and getting a guy that you think can develop into your next franchise quarterback. But I do think the Giants are going to need to take a swing somewhere along the line when it comes to quarterback. All right, coming up next, I've got some more scenarios. Am I buying? Am I selling? I'll tell you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com to get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, and that promo code is LOCKEDONNFL to get 50% off your first year. Hey, Giant fans, there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app usually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Game Time's all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you're going to pay. Whether you're looking for tickets to sports events, theater, comedy, concerts, or whatever, Game Time has you covered. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. We're doing a buy or sell on these draft rumors that are going to get answered tonight as the NFL draft gets underway. And don't forget, we at the Locked On Giants podcast will have coverage all weekend long. I'll try and get videos out to you, shorts, instant reactions. And of course, over on New York Giants on SI, we'll also be covering it with analysis, interviews, all the good stuff. It's going to be a crazy 3 days, but I'm well rested. I'm ready for it. And I'm just so ready to have all these mock drafts and these rumors that have been floating around come to a close. All right. So speaking of rumors, we're doing buy or sell. So let's get back into the list that I made up. Will the Giants trade Kayvon Thibodeaux if they draft Abdul Carter? I'm selling that one. All right. I don't think, it's going to happen. I don't think the Giants are going to trade Thibodeaux. Now, why do I say that? Because, a lot of people were like, well, if they draft Abdul Carter, he basically plays the same position as, Brian Burns, as Kayvon Thibodeaux. So you're basically going to have three guys who play the same type of role. Folks, not quite. Okay. Abdul Carter played part of his early college career as an inside or off-ball linebacker. So if Shane Bowen is really worth his weight or worth his salary, the creativity that they can do to have, the three of those guys on the field at the same time, you try it out, okay? So you don't draft Abdul Carter with the idea that you're going to replace Kayvon Thibodeaux right away at any rate. Kayvon Thibodeaux, remember last year, he was slowed down by injuries. And I get it. A lot of people are like, he hasn't quite, developed into the impact guy like a Aiden Hutchinson who was in his class. Thibodeaux has had some injury issues and, some things that he still needs to smooth out in his game, but you don't give up on him just yet. All right. The reason for that is you see what adding another pass rusher to the field can do. Can you get Kayvon Thibodeaux to that next level? So I don't think the Giants trade him if they, if they take on if they take on Abdul Carter. I know there was a rumor out there, a report that that he's on the block. But listen, if you're Joe Shane, naturally you're going to listen. If your phone rings and somebody says, "Hey, can we discuss Kayvon Thibodeaux?" If you're Joe Shane, you're not going to say, "No, get out of here," and slam the phone down. You're going to say, "Okay, what do you want to give me for him?" Folks, I believe that if the Giants were to move Kayvon Thibodeaux, it would take at least a first-round draft pick. Remember, Joe Shane tends to overvalue his guys. We saw it last year with Azeez Ojulari when I think the best offer they got for Ojulari was a fifth. Joe Shane wanted a fourth. So he's not giving guys away for nothing. I do not think there is a team out there that is going to want to trade right now, at any rate, trade away next year's number one pick to get Kayvon Thibodeaux. I just don't see it happening. I don't see Joe moving Thibodeaux for anything less. All right. He's still young. He's still, ascending. I think they try and work with the 3 edge rushers and see if they can't get, beef up that pass rush. And here's the thing. If by the trade deadline, the Giants season is in the tank, and let's hope it's not, because that would just absolutely stink if it is, then maybe if you're Shane, you say, okay, you know what? If I get a good offer for Thibodeaux, then maybe I consider moving him. But to move him right now, I don't see it happening. I really don't. So I'm not buying that report. I'm not buying that rumor. I think, if they take Carter, you play maybe Carter as your nickel linebacker. You swap out Micah McFadden and you replace him with Carter. You work with the amoeba defense, where the guys are kind of milling around and the offense doesn't know who's coming, who's dropping, who's staying. There are things they can do, and it's just a matter of how creative can Shane Bowen get if he does get Abdul Carter to work with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeaux. Okay, the next buy or sell. The Giants want to draft Shedeur Sanders, and not necessarily at number 3, but he's the target that they want to, ultimately land up with in the first round. Folks, I'm not buying that one. I'm selling that one. I know the Giants did a lot of work on Shedeur Sanders. They also did a lot of work on Kyle McCord. They did a lot of work on Jackson Dart. They did a lot of work on Tyler Shuck. They did a lot of work on Jalen Milroe. All right. It's not just a matter of, we're going to go to, have a scout at every game of Sanders, but no, we're not going to have a scout at every game at, a Milroe's or Shucks or McCord's. The Giants had representation at all these games. They worked with these kids at the combine, at the all-star games, at the pro days. They had them in for top 30 visits. They went to private workouts. They didn't pick and choose. Now, where I could see this rumor having developed, Joe Shane and Brandon Brown, the assistant general manager, spent a lot of time reportedly out in Colorado. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the guy that they're looking at. It could mean that, maybe they had questions that they wanted resolved. Maybe they wanted to talk to some people out there. What kind of kid is he really? People away from the Colorado program. There's any number of reasons. And look, this isn't to diss Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a really, really good quarterback in this league. I am not sure that he is going to be that good quarterback with the Giants because I just don't get the sense that that's the guy they're looking at. I would be very surprised if they take Shedeur Sanders. Now, it's interesting because on New York Giants on SI, I had somebody write me a letter saying, well, is it because Brian Dable is afraid that, if they take Shedeur, Now he's going to be looking over his shoulder because it's possible that Deion Sanders will be hired to replace him. Folks, let me tell you, if Brian Dable's looking over his shoulder at the possibility of being replaced, then he might as well hit the road now. Okay? I can tell you, he's not looking over his shoulder. All right? All is not lost right now. So, getting back to Shedeur, again, I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. And I'm not going to lie, he was somebody that, earlier in the mock draft season, I kept mocking to the Giants. But just based on how things have kind of gone and things that I've heard, I don't think that's the guy that they are going to be looking at. I really don't. I question if Shedeur is going to even make it down to the lower part of the draft order in the first round. All right. I think maybe the Saints take him. I think it's possible that maybe a team might trade up for him. Maybe Pittsburgh will trade up to get him. Who knows? Okay. Maybe Cleveland will try to trade back into the bottom of the first round with an eye on Shedeur. But I don't think it's going to be the Giants. And, we'll have to see on that one, obviously. But I would be very, very shocked if Shedeur Sanders is drafted as a Giant on day 1 or day 2 for that matter. All right, coming up next, I have a couple more, and then we will call it a show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, Giant fans, as a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5 o'clock. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: adding the hiring hashtag frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder why 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So go on, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And listen, if you haven't already checked out our Blue Crew community members, which is an exclusive group of Giant fans who get access to a toxic-free Discord channel where they can discuss what's going on with the Giants. And I'm in that channel too, by the way. I run it. Get text updates from me, and you can also text one-on-one with me. It's all part of the Blue Crew community experience. Check it out. Now's a really good time to do it, especially with X probably getting rid of the DM feature that they have. So check it out. The details are in the show notes. We would love to have you as part of the Blue Crew community members. We've got a small but growing community, and I hope you will consider joining it. There's a free 14-day trial, and then it's just $4.99 a month. So do check it out and see what you think. All right, let's continue with the buy or sell theme of today's show. And this next one, based on some recent reports over the last few days, are the Giants targeting Jackson Dart? I have mixed feelings on this one. And the reason why I have mixed feelings on this is I don't know that Jackson Dart is going to make it down to the Giants. I do believe there's interest in him, but you know what? The thing with Jackson Dart is he just comes from that Lane Kiffin system. And I just don't know how that's going to transfer over to the, what the system that the Giants run. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but a couple weeks ago, I did a show with the Locked On Ole Miss host, Stephen Willis. And check that out because we talked about that, about the transition that Jackson Dart would have to make for this Giants offense. That just kind of left me wondering if the Giants were just going to, go that route. And, look, I know everybody's like, well, he comes from Ole Miss and that's where Eli Manning came from. Okay, I get it. But, there's only one Eli Manning. Let's not cling to that. it would be nice if we can, if the Giants can find a quarterback that can be like Eli Manning, have the success he had. But let's not automatically assume that because a quarterback went to the Manning Passing Academy or attended Ole Miss that he's the next Eli Manning. It's just not a fair comparison. And it's not fair to put that kind of expectation on a young man. So the quarterbacks that I think might make more sense and that I would be more inclined to buy, I would say probably either Tyler Shuck or Kyle McCord. And Kyle McCord is a guy who we're really not talking about a lot. But again, like the others, they've done extensive work on him. I've heard that they really like him. I could see him maybe being the one they take the flyer on if he's there. And, I don't even know if they would have to trade up to get him. Maybe worst case scenario, they might want to look to trade to the top of the second round. But even there, I don't think they would have to do it because, the Titans, I think, have the first pick in the second round. And if they take Cam Ward, the chances they're going to take, a quarterback with their first pick in the second round, I don't think they're going to do that. So I just wonder if it's going to be Shuck or is it going to be, is it going to be Kyle McCord? I could see one of those two guys being the pick for the Giants at quarterback. That's not to say that I don't think Dart would make a good selection, but between just having my doubts about how he's going to transfer into the Giant system and if he's even going to be available, I don't know, guys. I find that one really, really hard to buy. And I know there's been some reports, including those from, my colleagues. And look, I'm not questioning their sources. I know they're very good at what they do. But just using logic, I just question if maybe it's a smoke screen. I mean, there's just so much smoke going on right now with teams trying to deceive and keep things under the radar. And, I just don't know. I mean, we'll find out, obviously, but I would be kind of surprised if it's Jackson Dart. I wouldn't hate it if it's Jackson Dart, but I just don't think he's going to make it down to them. And even if he does, I just have a feeling it's going to be Shuck, who I know is an older candidate. And that's kind of why I asked Brian Dable the other day, is it easier to groom an older candidate or a younger guy at quarterback? And of course, Dable gave me, well, it depends on who it is, which I kind of expected he would. But there was a reason why I asked that question because, just to kind of get a sense for it. The pros of grooming an older quarterback is that, he's been in more systems, he's had more experience, more fine tuning, if you will. Whereas a younger quarterback who rushes to come out is usually has a lot of more rough edges. But again, I guess it depends on the prospects. So, I'm going to say right now, Kyle McCord or Tyler Shuck would be my two choices, or my two guesses, I should say, as to a quarterback. Now, the last buy or sell that I want to talk about is the Giants will not draft a quarterback in this class because this class is just so, weak at the position. I'm not buying that one. I think if you're the Giants, you have to address the position. Not just because John Mara said something about it at the end of last year about finding the next franchise quarterback, but you have to take swings. Joe Schoen has not taken a swing on a quarterback since he has been the GM. I don't think you punt on it if you're him. You can make the argument that, okay, maybe you wait till next year. No, you don't know if you're going to be here next year. You don't know what next year's going to bring. And I'm not saying reach for a quarterback, but take one. I mean, if Brian Dable is this big quarterback guru, take one, even if it's a day 2, day 3 swing. See what happens. Worst case scenario, you develop your future backup, or you develop a guy that maybe you could trade down the line when you do get your franchise guy. Best case, you find, your next Dak Prescott or your next Jalen Hurts, guys who weren't first round draft picks, but who went on to become franchise quarterbacks for their team. So I do think the Giants are going to draft a quarterback. It's just a matter of how high. Now, remember, the Giants have what, 4 picks in the top 105? Ideally, you would like all 4 of those picks to hit the ground running in year one. But look, the Giants, again, based on how they have set up the team through free agency, if they had to have one of those top like 4 or first 4 picks, I should say, they had to have one of those guys sit for a year. I think they could, absorb that for the greater good and the long-term good of the franchise. So, that being said, the rumors will all, either come out in the wash. They'll either be proven true or they won't be proven true. And who knows, there might even be a few that pop up between the time you see this show and the time we start the draft. Again, I'll bring it to you all the latest from the draft. I'll do my best to keep up with everything and get it out in a timely manner. And again, check us out on New York Giants on this side. That's where all the written work is going to appear. So that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. Again, Giant fans, thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, spending time with us. And I will see you probably after the first round. So until then, have a good one.